Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of the City of Lake City Presents Studio 106. I'm joined today by Mr. Mel Hamilton, who has an incredible story we're going to jump into right here. Mel, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Jonathan, thank you for having me, and I'm proud to be a citizen of this fine city, Lake City, and I'm here to tell my story.
All right, we're going to get right into it. So, wherever you want to begin, tell the story of Mel
Okay,
Hamilton.
all righty. I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, and my parents moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, when I was 3. So North Carolina claims me uh, by proclaiming March 7th, Mel Hamilton's Day, and Charleston claims me. So there's some little friction between the two cities, but it's levity at best, and so my father had to move from the Charleston area because he worked at the Navy Yard, and the Navy Yard went away, so to speak, and he went to Wilmington to look for work, and that's how we got there. And as a child growing up in Wilmington, I had always stayed in touch with my South Carolina roots. Most of my relatives lived in the Goose Creek, Mount Holly area at that time, and so my presence in South Carolina was very frequent. Uh, I stayed in Wilmington until 1961, where I went to Boys Town, Father Flanagan Boys Home in Omaha, Nebraska, and a very famous place in itself. And from there, I graduated in 1965. Got a football scholarship at the University of Wyoming, and that's where the story begins.
That's right.
And so Laramie is where the University of Wyoming is, and you can imagine a cowboy state in the middle of Wyoming, a large area of land, but very, very few people. I think until last year it was the least populated state in the Union.
Wow.
And had been there for a long, long time in that status. And of course, the diversity is nil. You had antelopes, and one of the jokes is that there are more antelopes in Wyoming than people, and that's true. And so we should have known when we got our scholarships about those things. Obviously, we did not know, but they only showed us what they wanted us to see.
And so you say you had a football scholarship to the University of Wyoming. How did you fall in love with the game of football?
Well, actually, oddly enough, in Wilmington, I did not play football until I was in the 9th grade. And I only played in Wilmington for 2 months. And then I found out that my mom and the priest, Catholic priest, worked to get me into Father Flanagan Boys Home in Omaha, Nebraska. And so I had to quit the team, and because I moved to Boys Town. And Boys Town, you had to be doing something. You can't just lay around the cottages. You had to do something. And so I had to choose one, and so I chose football, and fell in love with it. And we had some great teams, and so I wanted to pursue that after I graduated from high school.
Very good. And so now, as you said, the story goes once you got to the University of Wyoming.
Yes.
So I'm gonna let you go from there.
Um, Laramie at the time was probably not too different from Lake City in the sense that interracial dating was something you did not see quite a bit. And of course, when I went there and all the things that Father Flanagan and Father Wagner of Boys Town taught me about, being accepted and being a part and jumping into your community and helping your community and being a part of that community. All that included dating whoever you fell in love with or whoever your attraction was. And so I took that to heart. I jumped right into it. I wanted to be a part of the community, and that meant every part of the community. And so I started dating. On this was in 1966. I went to Wyoming in 65 and 66. The football team, went to 67, excuse me, went to Sun Bowl for football and beat Florida State. I'm proud to say, and that's when I met my future wife, Kathy Kenny, and so the process for when an athlete wants to get married or is married is that they have student housing, marriage student housing. And so I went to the athletic director, and of course we know that athletic directors are in charge of all coaches, and say, hey, Mr. Jacoby, I met this girl, we would like to get married, I got her pregnant, I want to do the right thing. And he said, Mel, fine. He said, go have your coach, Lloyd Eden, go have him write up the papers. So I go over to his office, and as I'm going to his office, the coach is coming down the steps. And I said, Coach, I'd like to talk to you about some developments in my life. And Coach Jacoby, Director Jacoby, wants you to write up some papers for marriage housing for me. And I explained my situation to him. And he said, hell no. Hell no. You are not going to marry a white girl on the state of Wyoming's money. I'm not going to have you shacking up on the state of Wyoming's money. And I said, wait a minute, Coach. I'm expecting a child. I have to do the right thing. No way in hell. Now, this was keep in mind, this was in 1967.
So still in the height of the civil rights movement.
But it's not the 1969 that I represent.
Right. So this was 2 years before that.
That's right. So I am really upset. And I said, is that your final word on the matter, Coach? And he said, yes, it is. I walk off the team. Okay? I'm by myself, 2,000 miles away from Wilmington, North Carolina. No relatives in the state of Wyoming. I'm 18 years old. What am I going to do? I joined the Army, right in the middle of the Vietnam War. And go into the Army. I'm trying to get insurance and medical and money sent to my girlfriend, who by this time moved to San Francisco. Her mother and father was killed in Wyoming right that very summer after my incident with the coach. They were trying to cross the river right at the beginning of the summer, and you know that runoffs, and on horseback. And the wife got in trouble, and the father went and tried to help, and also got in trouble. So right in the middle of our relationship, having that problem, on top of that is this problem. So naturally, our minds are shook by this event, and so we decided that I would go into the military, and that way try to get some money and take care of the family and all of that. And anyway, it intentions were good, but the Army said no, you have to be married. And so at this point, over the months, I lost contact with my family. Successfully went through the Army. Had a great relationship with the Army. Enjoyed it tremendously, and to this day, I look back on it and say, "Why did you leave? You had so much fun." And a lot of people look at me like I'm not stable at this point. But Jonathan, it was nothing but fun for me. I don't know why I did not stay in the Army. But anyway, as I had in the Army, you have a lot of time to think, contemplate on your life. And I thought about, promising my mom that, yeah, I'll graduate from college. And that wasn't going to happen if I stayed in the Army. So I get this letter. God has a way of taking care of you. I get this letter from Lloyd Eaton. I don't know if he's thinking that maybe he played his hand wrong, or he did me wrong, or what. But he said, look, you're a great football player, and I would love to have you try it one more time to become a Cowboy. And that's Wyoming Cowboys. And I said, hey, God will let you know what he wants you to do and which direction he wants you to go. And so I grabbed it, went back, and one of the reasons I went back is because I didn't want to take a chance on losing my credits.
Right.
And so I went back 1969.
Which is where this chapter of the story brings you
Where
to.
this chapter started.
Before we get to that chapter, let me ask you this. So whenever you went back to the team, was your goal to get into the NFL, or was it the focus on a career after college? Or?
My goal was to get on the NFL. And I knew in the position that I was currently in at the time, I was not going to go as a pulling guard. I was 5'9" and 200 pounds. That wasn't going to fly on the offensive line.
Right.
But I knew I could play other positions. And that was I was hoping that would happen.
All right. So,
And so the Black Students Alliance entered my life and entered most colleges' lives during the I call it the social revolution. Everyone was talking about our freedoms, our rights, how we can make this world a better place. And we're talking about loving our fellow man. And so the Black Students Alliance on the University of Wyoming campus developed, and I signed up as a member. Everybody signed up as a member, and in October, Willie Black, who was the chancellor of the Black Students Alliance, said, "Football players at a meeting, do you know who you're playing next week?" We said, "Yeah, Brigham Young. We beat them all the time. Yeah." And he said, "You know who owns BYU?" And of course, we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
All we know is BYU had a pretty good, decent football team that we beat every year, and that was it. And said the Mormons. Well, what was that? We I never heard of a religion called the Mormons.
Mm-hmm.
And he said the Mormons own BYU. The Mormons do not believe that blacks can be priests in their religion, their church, and black people in their church are denied those rights. And we said, "Oh, heck no." No, not 1969, we still have this. And so, yeah, we still have it because Garcia and Smith in the Mexico Olympics went with the Blackfish. They're saying, yes, we still have those problems. And so we were thrown into it. We weren't doing it out of any grandiose ideas about fighting for our race or anything.
Mm-hmm.
We were thrown into it. So the Chancellor, Willie Black, said, "What are you going to do?" And we said, "We need to talk among ourselves, number one," which we did. We left the meeting. All 14 of us talked about, guys, this is fate. We've got to do something. What are we going to do? We decided the least intrusive thing to do is to go to the coach and say, "We would like to wear black armbands to symbolically protest the racist policy of the Mormon religion." We send Joe Williams, who was tri-captain, one of the Black 14, to the coach and said, "This is what we have decided to do, and here's the reason we have decided to do it." The coach, and of course this is hearsay, but we have no reason not to believe what Joe said. Joe comes back, says, the coach said, "Hell no. You're not going to protest against a religion or anything else." Now, of course, I, unbeknownst to the other players, understand that language coming from him. Okay?
Because you'd had that situation happen a few
2
years
years prior. Okay? And I had, oh, by the way, I had just gotten out of the military, and this was in October and August. I had just gotten out of the military. So I jumped out of the military where I fought for our nation. 2 months later, he kicks me off the football team. Again.
Wow.
So, coach told Joe, our cry captain, tell him no, you can't do it against religion or anything else. And Joe came back and we said, well, maybe he doesn't understand. We need to talk to him about what will he allow us to do in order to point out the racist attitudes of the church. and we went up in mass. What did we do that for? I mean, now we have really tested his authority.
Mm-hmm.
We have shown up in mass. He said, "Gentlemen," points us to the bleachers, walks in with all the other coaches. As of now, you're no. Now, this is the first thing out of his mouth. As of now, you're no longer football players of the University of Wyoming. But Coach Hell, and then Jonathan, he went on to berate us by saying that some of you don't know who your parents are. We try to be nice to you and give you a scholarship. Tony McGee, who played for the Patriots, Mac the Sack, great football player, found you on streets of Michigan, Flint, Michigan, picking up cigarette butts off the ground. Tony didn't even smoke. Attacked Tony personally. And he went on to say that if you're going to protest, you can go to Morgan, Grambling, LSU, but you're not going to protest on the people of Wyoming money. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen. And every time we try to speak, every time, he would shut us down. And that would all be hearsay as well, had God not put a older elderly lady underneath the bleachers doing workout, and she haven't heard that tirade. So that was verified later on in the investigation. But once again, you're no longer Cowboy football players. Bye. And so we lost our jobs. We lost our surrogate father, because that's what a coach is in a college situation. Most of us was 1,000 miles or more away from home. We had no money, and we lost our scholarship. We lost our jobs. We were allowed to finish. Of course, we already in the middle of the semester, allowed to finish. And from that point, most of us didn't know what we were going to do. I, on the other hand, had been in the service of this country, so I could go on the GI Bill, which I did.
And so that brings me to my next question. Once that chapter in your life was over, what was next after football?
After football, well, just trying to survive at that point, I had to get a job to supplement the GI Bill, which I did, and I was loading frozen foods for one of the leading companies onto the train, and then going to school full time. And I still had that itch to play the game, so I joined the rugby team, and it turned out to be so foreign for me that I just couldn't get into it. So I stopped playing it, just focused my education, got my degree in education, and tried to get in contact with my girlfriend, Uh, she had by that time had my my daughter, my oldest child. Uh, Her name was Kimberly, um, and of course could not. Uh, Met a young lady 2 years after that. Well, let's stay in 1969.
Okay.
Uh, Sports Illustrated, all kinds of media uh, descended on Laramie, and that's how the news got in the national media. Uh, Brinkley and Chat and Brinkley. I don't know if you remember them. You might be too young, but one of the main CBS, I think, the main newsman on TV at the time, broke the story about the Black 14 at the University of Wyoming, and that's how the nation found out about it. But anyway, the governor, keep in mind, to give you a sense of who this coach really was. Wyoming only has one four-year institution, Laramie, University of Wyoming. We were, the year before, went to the Sugar Bowl. The year before I went in the military, Sun Bowl. We were really building a dynasty.
And sorry to interject here, but one thing too, in the '60s, you have so many bowl games. Today, you only had a couple of bowl games
Right.
back then. So if you went to a bowl, you were one of the nation's top teams.
We
Weren't
were
you?
one of the nation's top teams, and we knew that, and we knew that had the 14 incident not happened, we were going to go to a ball game. We knew we were going to go to another bowl game. As you know, on October 17th, 1969, he kicks us off, the football team. I did everything I could to keep it in the public's eye. I would go to nursing home. I would go to high school, grade school, middle school to tell my story. We went to the 14th District Court of Appeals in Denver, Colorado. They ruled against us. We knew if we had gone to the Supreme Court, because of the liberal writings of the Supreme Court at that time, we knew that we would have won. It's expensive. By that time, I and two other of the Black 14, the original Black 14 members, were the only three on campus. They didn't know I was there, and I didn't know they were there. And so, three of us, I'm the only one that's fighting the case. I can't raise the money that it takes to go to the Supreme Court. So I let it go. And Jonathan, that's the only thing that I regret, is that I I could have, but did not do, was to take it to the Supreme Court.
And this would be to overturn the decision?
Of the appellate court,
Okay.
yes. And so years went by, and I was getting ready to tell you a story about the governor, who, of course, controls all positions. The governor came the night that we were kicked off trying to resolve the situation. He tells the president of the university, go get the head coach of the football team. tradition has it, right before a game, the coach take the team to a movie, relaxing. Well, the president of the university goes down to the movie house and said, the governor would like to have you in this meeting. The coach said, no, I'm not going to interrupt my procedures for anything. The governor would like to have you in this meeting. No, tell the governor I cannot break my routine. That's how powerful this man was, because we were building a dynasty, the only four-year institution in the state of Wyoming, and what else do we have that we can lay our hats on?
Wow.
And so that's how powerful he was. Matter of fact, there were banners going around said Lloyd Eaton for governor, Lloyd Eaton for president. You know, they backed, the state backed him immediately. Anyway, the governor couldn't find any other resolution of the problem, and he said the coach was right and manufactured the case. And then, of course, that's when we lose it in the 14th appellate court in Denver. And so that's the way it stood for years. We did have Joe Williams, tri-captain, play for the Saints. We did have Tony McGee, Mac the Sack, playing for the Patriots. And then we have Dave Hampton playing for Green Bay. And I think that was the only members of the 14 that went pro. But I did expect to go pro, maybe in a linebacker position or a corner position. But obviously, when those things happen, you do not get looked at very often.
And so after football, you said you went and you got your degree in education. So what did you do in that field afterwards?
I, Jonathan, want you to know that I am the first black principal in the state of Wyoming.
That's incredible.
And of this date, there's only 2 blacks that have been principal in the state of Wyoming to this very day.
And you were the first.
And I was the first. And it was a hard road. There was allegations made by me of racism, which the district had to look into. Got an independent investigator who found out that yes, indeed, you're being your staff have a plan to a concerted effort to make it hard on you to get you out of that leadership role. And so it was a proven investigation. So once that happened, you almost, it's in a no-win situation, because some of the people you get rid of is loved by the people who are still there, but yet you have to try to bring that together, and it doesn't work. So 3 years later, and that's usually the number of years you get after something like that, they take me out of that role and made me kicked me upstairs, so to speak. Made me the first black educational administrator in the district. And so I did that, and of course, like I said earlier, whoever would listen, I would go out of state. I would stay in state many, many miles, telling my story to make sure it didn't die. Oddly enough, my biggest client was the University of Wyoming. Different instructors would find out about the Black 14, find out that I was still in Wyoming, and invite me back. So I must have made Jonathan, oh, I'm going to say 15, 20 trips back at the University of Wyoming telling my story.
Wow.
And so I I said that the only thing I regretted was not going to the Supreme Court. But I also regret that we had several players that did not get their degree. I regret that tremendously. Um, I won't say their names, but we had a gentleman that had a tremendous uh, sports announcing career in Detroit, and he didn't get a degree. Very intelligent young man. We had, and I can say Isaac, Jim Isaac, who was shot by his wife. Volatile situation, I believe, made worse by being kicked off and losing his job. I don't believe that would have happened had not he lost his job as a football player. We had another educator, Ron Hill, whose brother was shot right in front of him, gassing up his car. That, I believe, would not have happened had he not been kicked off the football team. We've had Mel Meadows also shot in a movie theater because he is with a white girlfriend, shot in the back of the head. That would not have happened had he not lost his job. So many, our lives were changed. Our lives were changed dramatically. And I fight for, to this day, I fight to rectify that. Now, the university has swallowed their pride a little bit. In 1997, they contact us and say, look, we've got to make this right. And of course, we were saying reparations and we'll make it right. And they said, well, once again, the people of Wyoming will not let us do that. But we would like to erect a plaque. We would like to invite you back for a home game. We would like to give you your letter jacket that you were not able to get. And that's how they wanted to solve it. And create a Black 14 summer program to attract black kids to the University of Wyoming. And that is continuing today, Jonathan. I have agreed to that, but my fight is to get reparations for those players who have, because of the redirecting of their lives, have had some sort of terrible, disruptive things happen in their lives. And I, for one, believe that not would have happened had they not lost their jobs. So I still fight today for that, and will until the day I die. So then comes another chapter. We were not going to let this hate define us. So I'm talking to John Griffin, one of the Black 14 members. I said, John, you know, we never did hate Mormons personally. And he said, no, man, we didn't. We hated the policy.
Mm-hmm.
We all had, being in a place like Wyoming, all your friends were Mormons, more or less. And so we wanted people to realize that it was not a personal attack, it was a policy. And so um, I said, I'm going to write a proposal. No, I first said, I wonder if they would work with us to help us start a nonprofit. And so I called Elder Gifford Nielsen. Now, you're a young man, but Gifford Nielsen was a quarterback for BYU, Brigham Young University, who was up for the Heisman Trophy, played with Earl Campbell and the Houston Oilers, okay? Played behind Kenny Stabler as the quarterback. Second string quarterback for the Oilers. Full-time Mormon member, have always been in the LDS church, Mormon, the LDS, and he was in still is in a powerful position in the church. And I called him up and said, I'm thinking about starting up a nonprofit to feed the homeless, to feel the food insecure people around the country. And he said, Mel, he said, that's the kind of thing that I'm interested in. He said, write me a proposal. So I write a proposal, and thank God he approved it, funded it, gave us some seed money of $10,000, and Jonathan, we have delivered over 200 tons of non-perishable food throughout the country. Flint, Michigan, Tony McGee. Wilmington, North Carolina, Mel Hamilton. Denver, Colorado, John Griffin. Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, Lionel Grimes. L.A., California, Tony Willie Highsaw, and on and on. We have sent 40 tons of food at a time to food banks throughout the country. And the reason we picked those towns is because that's where we were from. And I also sent one to Charleston, because I had 2 towns to look after. Jonathan, when I did that, I looked in the little 2-page newspaper that Lake City had, and I typed up what I was doing and sent it to that email address, and never found out if they received it or not. But I, at the time, was looking for a place in Lake City who could benefit from my food delivery. And I still do today. 40,000 pounds is a lot of food. Who could take that much? So I go to Florence because that's the only place I could find out that could accept 40,000 pounds of food.
About how many people do you think y'all have helped?
Oh my goodness. I certainly can find that out, Jonathan, but I would say well over 500,000.
Wow.
Well over 500,000. But I can find that out for sure because they keep track of that for us.
And that just 500,000 here in this area, or 500,000 people around the country.
Around the country. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
That is an incredible story of going from such a low point to turning this into something that brings a huge positive impact, not just to a local community, but communities all around the country.
And we continue that to this day, Jonathan. So I invite anyone in the area to reach out to me, and I'll leave my information with Jonathan. Reach out to me and let me know if I can help their program.
Yeah, Mel will leave his information with me, and we'll have it right here on the bottom of the screen for you to see. So if you would like to reach out to Mel and get involved, the information is available right here on the bottom of the screen.
Thank you. So, in a nutshell, Jonathan, that is the Black 14 story. We have 14 members throughout 9 states in the union that are trying to bring this country and this world together. And I said world. We've been working with a town over in England, so we're going international now, and we worked with the University of Maryland in Germany, and teaching about the Black 14 and its implications. So we've gone international. And we have now worked with Brigham Young University, our nemesis. And we weren't going to let that stay as, us against them.
Right.
Hey, we're going to join you. We're going to join you. And we have no problems about joining you and fight against insecurity of other people's lives.
Right.
And so we continue to do that. We continue to work with the master's program at Brigham Young University to help us become self-sufficient in the 501(c)(3) program, so that we can continue to help and develop our program.
Very good. Mel, on behalf of everybody here in the city of Lake City, we thank you so much for all that you've done and all that you continue to do to help these local communities. And we thank you so much for taking some time out to come talk with us today.
Jonathan, thank you for having me. And I am a member. I live here outside of Lake City and would like to get involved in the things of Lake City.
And you will be at the Juneteenth Gala.
Yes.
On June 16th. So make sure you get your tickets today. We'll have that ticket information on the bottom of the screen too. And Mel, anytime you want to come back and sit in the chair and talk for a little while, you have an open invitation.
I've got more than football on my mind, Jonathan.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much for joining us, Mel.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody for tuning into this episode of Studio 106. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next week.